Attention all stations, stand by for an urgent tsunami warning for the Big Island and the islands of Maui, Lanai, and Oahu. This warning is based on a 7.5 magnitude earthquake near Kailua Kona.
Could it really happen? Could a giant wave really menace the beaches of Hawaii? There is something out there, and it threatens coastlines around the world. It's one of nature's least understood forces, tsunami. We often see hurricanes and typhoons that churn up higher than normal tides. They can flood low-lying coastal communities. But as dangerous as these storm surges can be, they are not the worst of all possible waves. The real monsters are tsunamis, freak waves usually produced by undersea disturbances like earthquakes. They can race across entire oceans and swallow cities whole. And they can leave tens of thousands dead. Throughout history, tsunamis have generated legendary disasters, ravaging the shores of nearly every ocean and sea. Without warning and without mercy, killer waves have struck again and again. And tsunamis are as mysterious as they are deadly, because so few have ever been observed by scientists. This extraordinary footage was shot in 1952 in the Kuril Islands off Russia's northern Pacific coast. A typical tsunami. It moved inland like a rising tide, but with far greater speed and force. Fortunately, it caused only minor damage here and no deaths. But tsunamis can be catastrophic. In the last century alone, more than 50,000 people have been killed by tsunamis. Most had little or no warning. Few were even aware of the danger. But for the people of the Pacific Rim, deadly tsunamis are not rare events. They live in the most seismically active part of the planet, an area crisscrossed by earthquake zones and dotted with volcanoes. So it's not surprising that the vast majority of the world's tsunamis occur here. In the middle of the Pacific, the Hawaiian Islands lie isolated and exposed. Its people are certainly no strangers to tsunamis, but some of them are acutely aware of the risk. Dr. Walter Dudley is Director of Marine Science at the University of Hawaii at Hilo and a leading expert on tsunamis.
I have a little on-site safety briefing.
Today he's taking one of his classes on a snorkeling field trip. But first, a few words of caution.
Okay guys, everybody listen up. We are only about 30 miles from the epicenter of two of the largest earthquakes that have ever struck this island. In both cases, they generated large destructive tsunamis. The waves took about 10 minutes to get here and were 10 to 15 feet high. So if you're out there on the reef and you feel a big earthquake, drop your gear, get out of the water and move ashore as quickly as possible. Okay, let's have a good lab. They are among the most catastrophic of all natural phenomenon. Unlike things like hurricane, there are no warning signs. The weather doesn't get bad. You don't feel the earth shake. It can be just a beautiful day, and then all of a sudden, the ocean can come up and come ashore 30 feet high. In the Hawaiian Islands, we've recorded tsunami wave heights as great as 56 feet on this island from the 1946 Aleutian tsunami. In prehistoric times, wave heights may have reached over 1,000 feet. Hilo has been struck by tsunamis as long as there's been a Hilo, but it was really in 1946 when there was a built-up downtown Hilo that we had a very, very large tsunami.
1946. After 4 years of war, Hawaiians can relax. At last, their island paradise is safe from attack. But more than 2,000 miles away, a new threat emerges from the sea. On April 1st, at around 12:30 in the morning, an undersea earthquake off the coast of Alaska generates a huge tsunami. Within minutes, it will make its first landfall on the Aleutian island of Unimak, 90 miles from the epicenter. Inside the island's Scotch Cap lighthouse, the men feel the tremor, but they have no idea what's heading their way. When the wave slams into their island, it's more than 100 feet high. After it passes, the Scotch Cap lighthouse has disappeared, and so has its crew. The tsunami continues racing south toward Hawaii at over 400 miles per hour. And just as in Alaska, no one here suspects a thing. Its first impact in the islands is deceptive. Some waves are as small as 2 or 3 feet, barely hinting at the tsunami's awesome power. By the time it arrives at Coconut Island in Hilo Bay, the tsunami has begun to swell to monstrous proportions. Its waves wash over the island, easily overtopping the 30-foot palm trees. Lining Hilo Bay were dozens of homes. Kapua Hewer's family lived on a bluff high above the bay.
My family ventured as close as it could to the edge of the slough when we saw this mammoth wave come in. It's 32 feet from here down to the ocean. We had to step back because where we were standing, all of a sudden it was ocean.
In the city of Hilo, residents panic when the first waves hit, fleeing for their lives. Many try in vain to outrun the tsunami.
We heard this horrible clash in Hilo, and we knew that the buildings on the ocean side were being knocked down. There was turmoil all day long. The whole town was awash with water and hurt people and lost people. We did see people in the ocean struggling, dogs trying to swim ashore. We saw that, but you couldn't do anything about it. The force of the water was so great, you couldn't venture into it. You had no chance. You felt very helpless and wondered, was there anybody out there that you knew?
One photographer watches in horror as a wave overtakes a dock worker trapped on a pier. In the next frame, taken after the wave has passed, the worker is nowhere to be seen, swept away like so many others.
I had gotten up, gone downstairs to wash up.
Larry Nakagawa was 14 when the wave struck his home in Hilo.
And as I was washing my face and brushing my teeth, I heard the strange sound of gravel being thrown on the pavement. So my brother came out and said, "It looks like we're having a tidal wave, so we better get on the tree." So he hoisted me up, and then my father was hoisted. He and my father were on the same branch. And because of the way the branch was, he had to hold my father around to grab hold of the trunk. And I think when the wave came, he felt that if he hung on to my father, the force of the wave would push him. And if he hung on, he would take my father in. So he let go, and he went with the wave.
It was strict horror to go into the mortuaries. When they found somebody, identified somebody, all the bodies were covered. They put a tag on the toe, but they were covered with a blanket. And when you pull back the blanket to see if you recognize them, the horror on their death and stroke was terrible when they died. They were frightened. Eyes open, mouth agape. and just that terror looked face on them. It was very unpleasant to look at.
"25 miles northwest of Hilo, the little peninsula called Lapahoehoe lies exposed to the full fury of the tsunami. Students have just arrived in the Lapahoehoe schoolyard and are waiting for classes to start. Among them are Bunji Fujimoto and his 2 brothers. That day remains vivid in Bunji's memory.
I could see a wall of water coming in from out in the ocean. I compare it to filling up a cup of coffee. We just keep pouring, and once it hits the brim, it spills over, and that's what happened back here, up on the wall. It didn't stop at the wall, it just came over, spilled over, and we could see that we were in trouble. We had to run. We started running. When the waves started coming over, we started running up to higher ground to my left, where the school building was. Fortunately, we made it in time. A bunch of the other children didn't make it, the other students, mostly students in this area. My brother was down here, but we never found him. I always wonder what he would have turned out to be like later on. A boy 14 years old and just getting to his prime of life. You can't do anything about it, you can't do any more than just think and talk about it.
Bunji's brother was among the 25 who died at Lapahoehoe, mostly students and their teachers.
Almost all of the bayfront area was nearly totally destroyed. The businesses were ripped right off their foundations. Many of the structures were wooden and they were totally collapsed. The railway, which was built on wooden railway ties, the wooden ties were floated up by the water and the rails twisted into pretzels.
159 people died that day, 96 in Hilo alone. Over time, the city would rebuild, but this tragedy would mark a turning point. Those who lived in the shadow of tsunamis were determined to be better prepared for the next killer wave. Just 2 years later, in 1948, the U.S. government established the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Honolulu. Today, the center remains on alert around the clock, coordinating the efforts of dozens of Pacific Rim countries.
We try to get a warning out as quickly as possible, and we have to go to our resources to find out where the earthquake is and what its magnitude is. And then, given that information, we issue this warning to the various participants in the warning system in the Pacific.
Equipped with state-of-the-art satellite technology, seismic sensors, and a vast network of wave monitors, the Warning Center can track any major earthquake on the planet and determine whether a tsunami is on its way. Scientists know that an undersea earthquake or a volcanic eruption, anything that causes the sea floor to shift suddenly, can displace huge volumes of water. When this disruption reaches the surface, a series of waves spreads out. They can move as fast as 600 miles per hour. Unlike a normal wave caused by wind or tides, the energy of a tsunami is evenly distributed all the way to the ocean bottom. In deep water, there's barely a ripple at the surface. But as a tsunami wave approaches land, the seafloor rises, the energy is compressed, and the waves can be pushed up as high as 100 feet or more.
There's always a number of thousands of people that could possibly live or die depending upon our decision. Here in the Hawaiian Islands, for example, every few years we have, that's interesting. we got an earthquake to deal with. It looks like it's a small local quake in the central part of Alaska.
The center detects 2 or 3 quakes every week. Most, like this one, present no threat of tsunami. But even when a tsunami alert is issued, not everyone will take it seriously.
When you go from one tsunami to the next tsunami, people don't even know what they are. So it's hard for them to even consider them a threat. First of all, you have to convince them that there is such a thing, and secondly, that it can cause destruction.
Even in Hawaii, with its tragic history of tsunamis, people can forget the lessons of the past. In 1960, 12 years after the warning center was established, a massive earthquake off the coast of Chile generates a tsunami that fans out across the Pacific. Hawaii lies directly in its path. Early on the evening of May 22nd, the warning center issues its prediction. A tsunami will hit Hilo sometime around midnight. But with midnight long past and only small waves washing ashore, many ignore the alert and return to the downtown bayfront. A few even gather at the Suisan fish market to watch the waves come in. The 35-foot wall of water strikes like a bomb. Once again, Hilo is brought to its knees, with $30 million in damage and 61 dead. This wave will change Hilo forever.
Today, if you look at downtown Hilo, you see the highway along the bayfront, which used to be the railway before the tsunamis. You see a big expanse of green parkland, soccer fields, places where people picnic and play ball. And all of that was homes and businesses, very, very heavily populated before the tsunamis. If you go there today, you can see the old roads which go in, driveways, all leading to nothing. They see that area and think what wonderful urban planning we have in Hilo to have all this parkland. That's planning thanks to Mother Nature and at great expense to the city of Hilo, both in terms of property and loss of life. Tsunamis have been rare events. There has not been a destructive Pacific-wide tsunami in over 30 years. But if you look at the number of tsunami events over the last century, there's been on the average 1 destructive tsunami every 7 years. So in many ways, you could say that we're long overdue for the next tsunami.
Walter Dudley is not the only scientist who's worried about the next one. In the Seattle office of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Dr. Eddie Bernard is spearheading efforts to alert the public to the dangers of tsunamis.
Most certainly they're killers. If you look at the history of the United States since World War II, more people have died from tsunamis than from earthquakes in our country. It's one of the few natural disasters that has such broad impact. Most natural disasters are very localized. An earthquake, although maybe several hundreds of miles, doesn't affect anything outside of that hundreds of miles areas. But if you add up the dimensions of the Pacific Rim shorelines, it's on the order of 100,000 miles. So one earthquake, properly placed, can affect the coastlines thousands of miles away.
In Japan, however, the greatest tsunami threat comes from earthquakes generated not thousands of miles away, but much closer to home. This island nation lies on top of one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. The Japanese know that the sea's bounty is often matched by its wrath. In 1896, an offshore quake sent 100-foot waves crashing into villages on the Sanriku coast. The next morning, local fishermen returning to shore were stunned. A few miles out at sea, they had not even noticed the tsunami passing under their boats. Now they found their homes destroyed, their families decimated. More than 22,000 had drowned. Four decades later, it happened again.
1,500 vessels were swept ashore by the wall of water, and many in their crews drowned. Government aid is being rushed, but it will be a long time before this stricken region can be restored in the land of the rising sun.
The Japanese are no strangers to tsunamis. Killer waves, like the ones recorded in this news footage, visit their shores with frightening regularity. But even the Japanese can be taken by surprise. In 1993, a quake off the coast of Okushiri Island generates tsunami waves that reach shore in less than 10 minutes. It's the middle of the night, and most do not have time to evacuate. One of the lucky ones is television cameraman Hiroshi Nakamura, who records his own escape on video.
There was a straight road from our hotel to the hills. We reached the crossroads as we were driving to the hills. Usually we would turn to the left. But the driver saw something like white waves ahead on his left side. The disaster I saw from the hill was just like a war movie. The devastation was something that made a strong impression on me. The fact that the whole town vanished is something I haven't forgotten.
Nearly 200 died that night in Okushiri. On the southern tip of the island, where there were hundreds of homes, only rubble remained. Dr. Eddie Bernard arrived in Okushiri 2 days later with a special tsunami task force.
Well, my emotional reaction was, it was like being at ground zero of an atomic bomb or something. Just, you couldn't believe the destruction. I mean, the power of these waves was far more than I had expected. Although I've been studying this phenomenon for 25 years, I'd never seen the power of a devastating tsunami and what it actually could do. And you just look at some of the structures that were ripped apart. You saw how things were destroyed entirely. Then you start to appreciate the forces at work here. Looking at a photograph of a young girl who wasn't too much older than my daughter at that time really brought home the fact that most of the people who died in this event were young children or the elderly. What we actually could see was the remnants of people's lives. Then you realize that these 500 homes had destroyed the lives of hundreds of families. And of course, death was part of that process. And so you had to be very respectful of what we were actually looking at. Although it was scientifically important, we didn't want to be disrespectful for those people who had passed away. And it motivated me as a research scientist to realize that the real reason for studying tsunamis in a research mode is to save a few lives. And that's the bottom line.
Today, Okushiri is slowly recovering from its tragedy. The people are rebuilding their homes and repairing their lives. But because space is at a premium here, most new homes must be built where the old ones stood, making them just as vulnerable to the next tsunami. There is one spot, however, that will probably never be rebuilt: the devastated southern tip of the island will likely remain an empty zone, a reminder of what was taken by the sea. "200 miles to the south is another town that has long suffered the ravages of tsunamis. Over the past century, Taro has seen 3,000 of its citizens swept away. The people of this town have learned to carry on in the face of tragedy, to live with the continual threat of disaster. The last great wave struck here in 1933. It left Taro in ruins and wiped out nearly a quarter of its population. A year later, the survivors fought back. They built a wall to keep the sea in check the next time it rose. Today, the wall dominates the town, a reinforced concrete battlement 34 feet high, and in some spots 80 feet thick. For the people of Taro, it's become a familiar and reassuring part of the landscape.
In the summer, the seawall gets warmed up, and I can't sleep because the heat reflects off of it. At that time, I wish there were no seawall, but I never forget its reason for existing. If there were no wall, I wouldn't want to live here.
Taro is also protected by its own tsunami warning center. Besides the usual satellite technology, there are video cameras, permitting technicians to monitor the harbor 24 hours a day, looking for changes in sea levels and awaiting the inevitable. And if alarms are sounded, Taro is ready. Crack teams of gatekeepers carry out regular drills, closing the wall's 6 doors against the sea. Each of the massive steel doors must be sealed in under 4 minutes. They've never been tested against a major tsunami. The seawall certainly offers the people of Taro a measure of comfort, but that may not be enough. Its 34-foot height should stop most waves, but the infamous tsunami of 1896 had waves over 90 feet high. There's just no way to know how big the next one will be. Back on the wave-ravaged island of Okushiri, they're building their own wall. When it's completed, it will surround nearly a quarter of the island, providing at least partial protection against the next tsunami. But the people of Okushiri haven't put all their faith in reinforced concrete. In a ceremony held every June, they pay homage to the dead, including hundreds of tsunami victims, enshrining their memories in stone. As darkness falls, a bonfire is lit to serve as a beacon, guiding home those who are lost to the waves. Paper lanterns symbolize the souls of the victims, released once again to the sea. It is an act of remembrance and perhaps a prayer for deliverance.